This is an 8-iron, and it's a dead shank.
Wow.
Way right.
Oh, takes a hop off the path.
You got to be kidding me. Very tough pitch shot right here. You got to hit it into the hill. One hop up and bite, and it's in.
Kind of like that.
Well, I would like to welcome to the Sub 70 podcast the winner of the Sao Paulo International and a great character of the game, Chubby Chandler. Chubby, thanks for taking the time to do this with us today. I really, really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Looking forward to it.
Well, a lot of the golfers we've had on here, the guys on all the tours around the world, they love talking about holding trophies and winning tournaments. So let's get right on to it. After all the years on the European Tour.
This shouldn't take long, then, eh?
Well, we got one. We got one. Finally, you get over the finish line. You know, what came together in that moment of greatness on a back nine on a Sunday to hold the trophy?
It was 1985, and I've been a singularly average to below average tour player in Europe, but have managed to get by on sponsorship, friends, whatever. And my father passed away in early July that year, and on the final day, I think I shot 71, 68, par 671. And I was, 4 or 5 behind, something like that. And this sounds pretty gross, but I went to the toilet before my round, and I had this strange sensation of being close to my dad, and he passed away about 4 months before. And I went out to go and play. Number one, with that feeling. Number two, feeling that it was going to be my day. And I remember that over every shot, I just kept saying, this is going to be my day. This is going to be my day. After many different meetings with different psychologists that Darren Clarke's been through, I realized that what me muttering to myself over every shot, it's going to be my day, was actually putting my brain in neutral. And the best players play in neutral all the time. And I played, and I had a friend. I come from a place called Bolton, which gave me this accent I've got. And when I got to Sao Paulo, there was a guy that was a member of the golf club came to me and said, Chubby, I'm from Bolton too. I'll look after you this week. And I birdied the 16th. I had about a 20-footer on the 16th, and I birdied. And this guy actually ran on the green to tell me, Chubby, you tied for the lead. And it was actually all bizarre, because there were a few spectators around. And anyway, I kept muttering it was going to be my day. And I hit a 4-iron to about 4 feet on the par 5 17th, made that eagle. And then I birdied 18 from about 12 feet. And there was a lot of nap on the greens there that week. And the grain was very like I'd played before in South Africa. And if you get it on the right grain, you can sort of pretty much know what's going to go in a long way out. And I hit this putt, and I actually got to the hole almost before the ball did, and watched it sort of go in from above it almost, and went on, and I think I won by 2 in the end, and I shot 63, and that sort of feeling actually was never to be really repeated again. Although I tried to mutter to myself often, it's going to be my day, it never worked again. But it was nice to have a win in a 14-year career. You want to have one win in a proper tournament, and that was it. So, yeah, I know the feeling. It's a long time ago, but I remember it pretty well.
It has to be sad. I mean, I know you kind of joke that you didn't play that well, yada, 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 and obviously you played really well. You played professionally for 15 years, and I was talking to Tommy Armour III yesterday, and I said, you're coming on, and TA goes, he was a lot better player than he lets on to be. I played a lot of golf with Chubby, and he was a hell of a good player. So after all those years, like, it had to be satisfying to get it done when you needed it on a Sunday, right? It's looking back, it still has to be satisfying that when you needed it, you had it.
Yeah, well, it's always nice too, because when guys like you want to do what we're doing today and they do a bit of research, there is one win on there. And I did play a lot with Tommy Armour the third, and he probably gave me a few bad habits because I used to play practice rounds with him because he used to like to have a bet and I like to have a bet. And he brought down the first hole and he pulled out of his golf bag the racing paper. And I didn't need any encouragement on that. And I'll never forget it. I used to play with him and John Jacobs quite a lot in practice, and people would look and think, what's this Bolton lad, this Lancashire lad doing playing with two Americans? But they were fun in their own right. And actually, I've been out on the Champions Tour 2 or 3 times with Darren and caught up with Tommy, and of course, Tommy's brother's working for Darren.
Yep.
So, sort of completes the circle.
Well, and I love the era in which there's a nostalgia, I think, for the guys from, especially the European Tour in the 70s and 80s. It was a different era back then, right? I've had Jesper Parnevik on to talk about it, and he was, the money, it was like a traveling circus. There was no money in it. You did it for the love of the game, and you might find, somebody in the top 10 on a Friday or Saturday night at the pub, versus the gym. Looking back at it, was it a great era to play in, and was it a hell of a lot of fun to be in this traveling circus going around the world and playing golf for a living?
The first year I played, the very first tournament I played in 1975 was the Portuguese Open. And it was a bit of a shock to me because it was a bit like a golf holiday. The Irish guys, some pretty famous ones like Christy O'Connor Sr., Christy O'Connor Jr., Eamon Darcy, there were about 5 or 6 of them, and they get in the bar after the first round. And they'd have scores from 66 to 76. But they'd be all having a few drinks. There'd be a guy with a squeeze box. There'd be guys with spoons playing the spoons, and they'd be singing Irish songs. And, I didn't really know what to expect then because, there wasn't people going in the gym. There wasn't people with trainers, physios and whatever. And like I say, it was just a bit like a boys' golf holiday, which I think is funny because I think the Champions Tour is a bit like that now, here.
Do you think there was something therapeutic about it? And in other words, there's the modern player, and obviously the play has never been higher. The athletes are bigger, stronger, faster. But is it almost healthy at some point in time to have a breather after you're out there grinding it like that? And do you think a lot of it was that? I mean, back in that generation where they needed that break from it to go relax, have some fun with your mates, have a dinner, and get it off your mind. It seems like now it'd be a 24/7, 365 grind between your team, your working out schedules being really crazy. Do you almost encourage your guys that, hey, you need a night off every now and then, or get out of the gym for a day and go explore the city just for your own, sanity, for lack of a better word?
I think explore the city is an interesting one. Certainly in Europe, because you go to and the rest of the world, you go to so many iconic places. Whereas in America, you tend to go to the cities, and like this week, we're half an hour out of San Antonio, so you can't sort of keep nipping into the city to see what's going on. But certainly in Europe and places like India and Thailand and Japan and wherever, I always try and encourage the guys to go and have a look at where they are, because if they're not careful, a career goes by and they haven't seen anything of the world, yet they've travelled the world for 15 years. When I played the tour at first, there wasn't any thought of letting your hair down or anything like that. That's what people did. There weren't gyms in the hotels for starters, so nobody could go to the gym. And that was the way the life was. And on the European Tour, I know in my first year, if you didn't finish in the top 20 on the European Tour, you made a loss. You didn't make any money.
So did you have another job then when you weren't on tour to help make ends meet at those years when you weren't playing that great, just to kind of make it work? Or how did you make a full career out of it in that period where there was not that kind of money on tour?
Because unbeknownst to me, I started doing my job now then, and I went out and got myself sponsors, did a few golf days, and managed to make ends meet by making money outside of my winnings, and then played local golf, local PGA golf to win stuff. And I remember, I tell guys now that I remember in 1986, the first week out, I finished, I think it was 19th in the Can Open. It was the first tournament. And I think I won $2,000. And I remember thinking, that pays for my next 6 weeks. And the young kids today, their sense of entitlement is so that they don't think like that.
With the young players today, is with the opportunities they have, is it almost because there's so much they can do and play all over? If you have a really good young player, do you almost have to look at that situation as we may not grab everything we need today because we need to think about this 5 years out, versus how do we push so hard when you're 19, 20 years old at those opportunities? It's almost like back in your day, I'm sure if your corporate sponsor came, you just take it because you guys need to make ends meet. Now is there a real, I'm guessing, strategy to how you might look at a young player's career?
Yeah, that's right. And again, going back to when I first turned pro, there was a golf ball called Uniroyal. And Uniroyal turned up, and Titleist was, as is now, the most popular ball. But Uniroyal were paying some decent money, maybe £500 for the year in those days, decent money. And a few guys, quite a lot of guys, changed to this ball, and it wasn't round. You know what I mean? It was. You had to have one. You'd never probably seen one, but they have a ring that's the size of a golf ball that the ball has to go through. Well, every ball obviously is now uniform size, but then they carried a ring, and half the Uniroyal didn't go through the ring. And then they'd look for a smaller one that went a bit further. So, it's changed a lot. Use the clubs that's got them to where they've got to. I think when you go further on in your career, you can make a equipment change easier because of all the technology, the TrackMan, the this, that, and the other. The club firms now are unbelievable at putting stuff together. So John Rahm changed equipment about a month ago seamlessly, absolutely seamlessly. And I've seen with Matt Wallace the work that's got into him from Callaway to try and help him adjust to what he's got. So there's been a lot of, funnily enough, there's not been a lot of work on the irons. It's usually the driver that's the one. The driver and the golf ball is the one that's been quite hard to change to. But the work that goes in from the club manufacturers is crazy, how hard they work.
Is the golf ball the toughest out of all of it, even more than the driver, to get exactly what those guys want at that level?
I think the golf ball is a big thing. I think, interestingly, the change from a Titleist to anything else is probably the most difficult. I think if you were changing from another ball manufacturer to another one and leaving Titleist out of the equation, I think that's probably easier because I think all the other balls are probably a bit similar. And I think Titleist is a bit similar, but I think there's a mental side to moving away from the Titleist because most of these guys have used the Titleist for 10 years as a junior and first 3 or 4 years as a pro. So I think that change from Titleist to something else is probably bigger than the other way. Other balls.
So when you transition from being a player, and like you said, you started doing you didn't know it at the time, but the management work while you're on tour and you get the training ground for it. What was the catalyst that said, okay, the playing career is coming to an end. I have an idea to make this work. And then at what point did you know ISM was going to be a thing and you could make a nice living doing it and you could help people in their careers? Like, how did the transition happen and how long did it take for you to realize you had something pretty special there?
Well, probably for about 6 years from about 1983, I used to book flights and look for hotel deals and cheap hire for car deals and maybe stay different to the rest of the tour for about 4 or 5 of my friends. A guy called Michael King that played Ryder Cup, a guy called Carl Mason that I roomed with, another guy called Nick Job. So I think that looking back, that was me starting doing what I do now. And that probably grew a bit. And then as I got to 1988, 89, in 87, 88, I was doing some corporate work for a very, very big, iconic British company called ICI in South Africa. And I was doing this corporate work, which was usually golf days the day after the tournament finished, which the tournament finished Saturday, so we'd have the golf days Sunday with these clients of ICI. And we got John Bland to help in South Africa with me, and he was obviously a top player there. And the boss of ICI in South Africa was a guy from Manchester called Mike Parker. And he then transferred back to Britain in 89 and took over ICI colours and fine art, fine something. Anyway, they dealt with all the Japanese camera companies, Fujifilm and Nikon and all these people. And these Japanese clients were coming to Britain. So he said to me, I want to redo the deal we had in South Africa in Britain. I said, well, I'm beginning to wind down, so I was beginning to become less competitive. It was becoming a chore, missing cuts, etc., etc. And I said to him, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I said, I hear what you say. I know exactly what you want. I will get a couple of guys, we'll put the logo on them, which was a big deal because it was possibly the biggest British company at the time. Get 2 players to put the logo on, and I'll manage the program. And that was the start of ISM. I went out at the European Open in September 89. I found 4 or 5 of my pals that didn't have management companies. I said, I'm going to do this. There's no downside for you. I'll just take 20% or 25% of anything I get you. And off we go. And then, of course, I get this big company to sponsor 2 of them. And then the rest history, because everybody sees this. And anybody that hasn't got a management company or weren't happy came to me and said, but what can we do? And probably by the middle of 1990, I had probably about 15 of my pals I was managing. And it was good, I felt involved and whatever. But the big break came in August 1990 when a young kid called Darren Clarke wanted to talk to me about whether he should turn pro or not. And it wasn't about management, and we had this conversation for an hour about the advantage of turning pro then rather than waiting for a year as an amateur and play the Walker Cup in Ireland, which would obviously be a big deal for him. And he, after an hour, he looked at me, he said, okay, I just want to play golf. Can you do everything else? I'm not going to say no or maybe or anything. I said, yeah, of course I can. So that was how we went on. And then he said, what about a contract? And I said, well, Arnold Palmer and Mark McCormack never had a contract. They just shook hands and got on with it. And he said, right, that's what we'll do. And we still haven't got a contract down there. He's still, the way to do it. He's still on that agreement. Same handshake. Yeah, that same handshake. And I then played with him about a week later, and he hit a 3-iron on about the 10th hole we played, and it sort of went. It was 200 yards. It went about 100 feet in the air, came down soft about 5 feet away, and I thought, I've got a business here. This kid's going to be very, very good. And that's basically what happened. And once he'd signed, then we got a lot of the young amateurs at the same time. So people like Paul McGinley, Andrew Coulthard, those sort of guys, David Howell, all turned pro. Lee Westwood, 2 years later, all turned pro, and maybe 4 years later, Lee. And that Walker Cup match that he would have played in 1991, we went to watch as a guest of the guy that introduced us, who was a Dublin lawyer, and called Dougie Heather. And we went to these guests, and as Darren would do, he'd have half a dozen pints of Guinness at lunchtime. And one of the amateurs, one of the players, and I can't remember who it was, but he topped it. And he looked at me and he says, "You're right, Chubby. They look like a bunch of amateurs."
Mindset, right? He had the mindset.
Yeah.
I was going to...
Go on.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, when you saw Darren Clarke and you meet him when he's young, and that is it, and the same question I have is for Lee Westwood, is it physical talent? Is it the mental side? Is it the spirit of competition where you know they won't crumble? Is it when you saw those guys, could you see essentially, to call it what it is, greatness. I mean, both their careers have been unbelievable. Did you recognize it right away that these guys were really, really special?
Yes, with Darren. A little bit longer with Lee, but Lee was much more the mental side, and he was incredible when he turned pro. It was 1995, I think he turned pro, not 93. And he definitely didn't do disappointment. You know what I mean? He played, and if something went wrong, he just said, well, I'll learn from that, and moved on. And that's a fantastic trait to have as a golfer. A lot of the golfers get bogged down with disappointment and focus on the negative things that happen to them rather than the positive things. So with Lee, it was slightly longer. Darren, it was instant. Then Lee got a game to match his attitude, and then he became a serial winner in the late 90s. I think he won 24 times in 4 years at the end of the 90s.
So his was Darren. Lee's took more time, maybe a little, didn't have the total natural talent that Darren had, but boy,
That's right.
he grinded it up per se, and you put all those elements together.
Yeah, Lee's attitude made up for the lesser talent than he had with Darren. Darren had an unbelievable talent for playing golf. Lee didn't have quite the same talent. Obviously had a very good talent, but not quite the same, but was stronger mentally than Darren was.
When Darren finally won that Open Championship, obviously it had to mean everything to him to have that achievement, especially in his 40s. What did it mean for you in your part of that journey and accomplishment?
It's interesting because I knew how important the Open to Darren was. You know, he was an out-and-out links player. He was born and bred on links, and you know he knew that his best chance of winning a major was the Open. And, you know, to get it when it looked like it had passed him by was amazing. And yes, I knew exactly how much it meant to him. And obviously after his wife had died in 2006, it probably meant even more than it would have done. But even if she'd have been alive, it would have meant everything to him.
And to you? Would that
victory
mean
obviously meant a lot to me because, like I say, you know, you've gone every step of the way with Darren and knew how good he was and you know how qualified to win a major he was. And like I say, it seemed to have passed him by. And he won in Mallorca about 2 months before the Open. And he won because a guy, I think one of our guys, I think maybe a guy called Chris Wood, who at the time we managed, and I think he messed up and let in Darren to win. But that was a big thing because he'd had a couple of years in sort of like of averageness before that, and so suddenly came up with this win and then went on and won the Open, which you know was amazing. But to me, sort of, you're always happy when I see all the work they do. Not everybody sees the work and the torment they go through, and the fact that you know a hotel room 5,000 miles away from home can be a very lonely place and just keep putting the last to miss the cut. And I see all that and I talk to them, and you know when they're not right and struggling. So you know when things come right for them and it goes the other way, you number one, you're relieved, and number two, you're joyous because that's why we're out here, isn't it? To sort of help them win tournaments.
It was a popular win. We were on a golf road trip driving back, listening to it on XM radio, and I mean, we were fist pumping as he was coming down. I think like he was so well liked over here and so well respected. I think he had like the entire golf world pulling for him to get it done on that back nine, right? I think everyone wanted to see him win that. I really do. Like it was just such a great victory.
I think you're right.
There was like everybody in that car was like, come on, Darren, like you can do this, right? I think it was such a great, he's not finished, he's still playing well, but I mean like such a great accomplishment for such a world-class player for such a long period that people were happy for him to see him get over that finish line. Yeah,
I agree. He is very popular over here.
Hugely. Oh yeah, people love him.
I think he's as popular here as he is in Britain. And It's partly because I think people like the fact that he's a bit of a maverick. You know, that there's a cigar or a cigarette there, there's a beer there, and he talks openly about going having a pint, you know, when he's won. And I think, you know, so the American public relate to that. I'm not saying the British public don't relate to it, but it seems like the American people, and the fact he's Irish too, I think makes a difference over here. Irish people are viewed differently than English people in America, I think. So it's the whole thing. But yeah, I think he's very popular, and it was a massively big deal that day.
He's really found some form, too, on the Champions Tour with Sandy Armour caddying for him, and he's just been on fire. What's clicked in his game for him to kind of, turn it on to the level that we all thought he would, be performing out there as long as he still hits and as good as he still is? He's really found his form of late, playing some great golf.
Yeah, I think he had a bit too much time away, not away from the game, but away from properly competing. And, 5 years ago, when he's in the run up to being a senior, a Champions Tour player, and I think he spent a lot of time fishing at Aberco, and probably not as much time practicing. And so when he hit the ground to become a Champions Tour player, I went to his first event in Seattle. I'm not sure he was quite as ready as he probably would have wanted to be. And I think it's probably taken him a year of adjustment to actually come to terms with the life out on the Champions Tour. And his wife Alison has joined him now, travels with him nearly every week, which I think is important, because Darren was always a man's man that, he'd play, he'd hit balls for an hour, and then we'd go to an Irish bar. So that doesn't happen on the Champions Tour. So the guys have got their wives out there, and he's settled into that way of life. And I think the other thing is I always told him he played better when he was fat, and as you can see, he's put a fair bit of weight on. And we had a discussion in October that I said, why don't you? Because I'd seen he'd finish rounds. Every week it was like a bogey on the last three or two bogeys on the last three. I said, why don't you're allowed a cart, why don't you travel on the cart? So he started going in a cart in October, and he's made about $1 million since. And all you see now is Darren driving down the edge of the fairway with a foot hanging out the cart like any club golfer would, and with a plume of smoke coming out the cart.
Well, it makes sense, right? Like, you're 50 years old. Like,
it does make sense.
You're going to do this for three.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's a strong guy, but if your legs are that much more fresh on Sunday afternoon, take the advantage, right? Sandy can walk.
Yeah, absolutely.
No,
absolutely. And he said to me after he won Hawaii, he said, Langer's using a cart as if to say that's actually certified what he's doing is okay.
Yeah. If I was a Champions Tour player, I'd be taking the cart every time. Like I said, if you can keep your legs fresh and get more rotational. And it's interesting to say about his golf swing. Do you think him being, he's just naturally a big, thick guy. You think that's more of his natural, God-given golf swing, is kind of having that bigger, stronger body, and it's a more efficient, it's the golf swing he kind of naturally has. And so by having a little bit more weight or mass on him, it's actually good for his swing.
His golf swing hasn't changed a whole lot in 30 years. And it's interesting at the moment. I stayed with him for 4 days 2 weeks ago in Aberco. And talk about an idyllic life. He has got an idyllic life. But he gets up at 5:30 every day. He goes in the gym for an hour. Then he comes back and he has 3 or 4 cigarettes and a couple of cups of coffee, and looks at the internet. Then he goes and practices for 3 hours. And he comes back and has another coffee and a couple more cigarettes. Then he goes back and short game, chip and putt. And then he goes out and plays the golf course at Aberco at 12:30, 1 o'clock every day. Comes in, goes to the bar, beach bar at 5, bit of food, few drinks, bed at 7:38. Every day, that's his life. If he doesn't fish, sometimes he has a day off and goes fishing, but that's what he does. And it's interesting. He's being coached right now, and he's being coached for about 4 months. And you might know the guy's name. I can't remember his name. But bizarrely, he has never met this guy. He's been coached over the internet, Instagram, this, that, and the other. And he's never met his coach, which I find absolutely incredible.
Well, when I'm noticing his golf swing, to me it looks more like he used to play, where it's more rotational and he's covering the ball more. Where he looks like he's not trying to hit it as high. It looks like he's just, it's more of that link swing where he's covering it. And that looks like his natural golf swing to me, where he covers the ball with his body so well. And that's, to me, where I can tell that just from watching his career that the swing looks more like what I would think of the Darren Clarke heavy ball flight, great links player type of golf course or golf player, where that it's that heavy links ball flight he kind of has going. He hits it high enough, but it looks very rotational, very much covered to me.
That's exactly it. And I said to him when he was telling me what this guy had told us to do, I said, "Yeah," I said, you were told that 25 years ago, and you did it. I said, "You're swinging just like you used to," which is actually an unbelievable compliment, isn't it? To sort of find that he's actually swinging 25 years later, a bit like he did when he was a kid. It's not quite as long a swing, but he gets the ball out there. He's got two sons that hit it way past him. Tyrone and Connor. He's the youngest son who doesn't play golf I played with, and he's hit 402 yards on one hole, this son, when I was there.
The athleticism got passed down a little bit, huh? The fast twitch muscle fiber is there.
That's it. I
was going to ask you about a young Rory, too. Is when you first saw him and heard about him and witnessed it when he was, even before he was a pro, was he one of the most talented, or if not the most naturally talented golfer you ever saw?
I met him at 13 on Darren's foundation, and he was a tiny little kid. And I think he was 3 handicap then at 13, which was, now that's not that abnormal, but then it was very abnormal. And he was a cocky little guy. You know, he stood out because he was cocky. And then we sort of remained involved with him and Jerry, his dad. And I would say that from 13 to present day, he's the most naturally gifted golfer I've ever seen. And he still is. He still is.
It's going to be interesting to see. I mean, obviously the talent is there of, you know, if he starts working with somebody, or what, you know, what's he got to kind of do to find it again or whatever it is here. He's a little bit erratic lately, but I always think there's just so much natural talent there that just going to be a little of this or a little of that, and he's going to be right back. And I think when he is on, I think he's the best player in the world if you look at the whole thing, from between driving the ball.
He's fun to watch, isn't he? I mean, you know, he hits a lot of golf shots. I had a couple of good chats with him last week at the match play, and he was noticeably working ridiculously hard. He lost the first day when Poulter was 7 under, I think, when he beat him, and then he went and hit balls for about 2.5 hours after, and then later in the week he was hitting, and I said to him, you know, you working hard? He said, yeah, well, there's a big tournament coming up, and I think if he's able to go under the radar a bit at Augusta, I think I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't find a bit there and contends. Because to me, out of all 4 majors, the one he should win is the Masters.
Mm-hmm. That golf course has to look perfect for him with the high draw and right.
Draw.
I mean,
absolutely. If he's soft, for some reason he doesn't play firm golf courses very well. He plays soft courses very well.
He's going to get one of them. He's too good. I was going to ask you about the Masters. Besides Rory, is there any other picks that you're kind of watching this week of guys that are trending the right way that you think could have a really, really strong Masters showing?
Don't you think there's an awful lot of people can win at the moment, any week? You only have to look at the match play last week, and everybody was beating each other, and, you know, sort of, I hadn't seen Scheffler play before, and he's apart from the fact he looks like Seve about 50% of the time, he has his own way of playing. I quite like that. You know, he sort of, he looks as though he's quite creative, and then the same breath he suddenly muscles it down the fairway. Guys like that aren't afraid to win anymore. So there's got to be like 20 guys, 30 guys that can win next week. I wouldn't pin it on anybody. I would think if a European was going to win, I would say that somebody like Danny Willett will play well, won't he? You only have to look at ex-champions. They usually play well. They know how to get round. He finished 8th last week. Somebody like that. And then JT's obviously going to have a chance. Playing great. Just won a big golf tournament.
Well, the question of, like, are the young young guys long enough? You can take that out of the equation anymore, right? Or they're all long, so it's not like, he's a quote-unquote mid-length hitter, so he's going to struggle there a little bit. I mean, any of these guys, 35 and under, bomb it for the most part. So, yeah, I think there's and then the question always becomes, I mean, the guys are long enough, and how much on that golf course is experience, like you're talking about with Danny Willett, right? And you're right, there is a trend line where guys who play well there seem to play well there. And then how much is that experience worth? Is it a shot or two around where they're comfortable on the course and they've been there 8 times, and so there's an advantage over like a young guy like, Scotty Scheffler? That's, how much of experience pops in on that equation to win it?
I think the experience matters an awful lot, and you only have to see that. I mean, even now, Freddie Couples and Langer do themselves justice in the Masters, and Larry Mize, they get round, they know the way round. So I think sort of people like Danny and maybe Charles Schwartzel, people like that, they have something. Cabrera always used to come back and play well out the blue. Yeah. So the guys that have won the Masters and been around the Masters a lot definitely have a bit of an advantage. And then the young guys have the advantage of the fact they hit it so far.
Yeah, it's going to be a great tournament. Like I said, I agree with you that the talent's never been better. So it's going to be, pretty wide open of, like there's probably, 40, 50 guys who could legitimately win it. It's going to be, it's going to be fun this year.
It'll be nice to have some spectators back in, because I thought it was very, very different last year and quite flat. And it even made the course look average, didn't it? Because you're used to seeing the course lined by spectators, so the fairways are framed. And suddenly last year there was nothing, and it didn't look right and it didn't feel right. So it'll be great this time to get back to something like normal.
Yeah, I agree. And the excitement of the back nine with the patrons being a part of that equation, right? I mean, I think that's you need that to get the full effect of the Masters and to see, there's nothing better on the back nine at Augusta. So I was going to ask you too.
It was interesting last week at the match play. There were, I don't know how many they let in, maybe 8,000 a day, 7,000 a day. But the ones that were in were unbelievably quiet. There was, that people weren't clapping good shots, and it was strange. It was a very quiet atmosphere, even though there were, like I say, 7,000 or 8,000 people in. So I hope there's a few rows at the Masters. When there's a few rows in that valley, there's nothing like it.
Well, I wonder too if do people not? I mean, it's such you're just starting to do this again. Do people not know how they should react? Should they be able to yell and cheer and blow their right? I can understand how people might be, for lack of a better word, conservative, where it's like, well, am I supposed to do this, or am I supposed just to stand here and be quiet? With the whole, how do people come out of this COVID thing, socially and act around each other? I'm sure there's a little bit of that dynamic to it.
I think there is, and the good point about it is that the mashed potatoes seem to have gone.
Yeah, I'd be fine with never hearing that one again, personally.
Yeah, me too.
European, you got a couple more and we'll get you out of here, but if we could make you the captain of the ship of the PGA Tour and the European Tour, you're running the whole organization, how could those tours work better together in the future? And is there a future where they are going to be more aligned, making the events coincide and working more as on the same team, per se, for lack of a better word? Yeah,
without doubt. You're probably aware that the PGA Tour bought 10% of the European Tour at the end of last year, which was a definite saviour for the European Tour, because they had a tough time with COVID because they don't have the same cash reserves the PGA Tour have. So in that way, it was good. I think what that did was accelerated cooperation between the two tours from maybe 3 to 4 years to now. And my guess is, I imagine that next year, I think there'll be half a dozen co-sanctioned events on the European Tour that will be jointly co-sanctioned with the PGA Tour. And I think that's probably a forerunner, possibly in the next 4 or 5 years, for it to be one tour. And it'll be PGA Tour Europe, and it'll be a viable, very good tour that will be an understudy to the proper PGA Tour over here. And there will be cooperation between the two tours, and there already is. I mean, Jay Monahan's on the European Tour Board of Directors now, which I think is a fantastic move for both tours. And in the era of the Saudi Golf League, the Premier Golf League, and various things like that, I think it's accelerated the two tours coming together to combat that and protect what they have already.
So would it be some of like maybe the Rolex events or the PGA Championship over in the UK? Would those kind of maybe
I imagine
become...
they're the obvious ones. The Scottish before the Open, the BMW because it's like RTPC, probably Abu Dhabi in the desert because that already has a few Americans playing it anyway. I would think there'll be a few next year, and what that will do is give some Europeans a chance to get on the PGA Tour because they win, they'll get the same rights as a winner over here, and it will give the opportunity to some of the Americans to grow their brand internationally. And I think all in all, for golf fans and the game, it'll be a very good move.
Yeah, and if I'm an American player, like at some point in time, I want to go play in some of those iconic championships on the European Tour, right? Like I imagine those guys would love to have, like you said, the players and the BMW in their trophy case, right? I mean,
yeah,
I think it'd be...
I have the utmost regard, whether you love him or hate him, I have the utmost regard for Patrick Reed because he's bothered to travel and play, and he hasn't always been on appearance fees like people think he has. And he's actually gone out and played. I played with him in Turkey in the Pro-Am in Turkey. I played with him and Keith Pelly, and he's played in the desert. He went over and played the last tournament of the year, the TP World. And, maybe he got a couple of air flights in a hotel, but he certainly didn't get fees for everything. He did for some, but not everything. And I admire that. I admire people that take their bag of clubs and go and play all over the world.
Yeah, I think it'd be very cool some of those iconic events to see the best players in the world and not having a penalty. Well, there's a limitation, or get that field at the BMW as good as like a World Golf Championship. I think it's such an iconic event to see all of those guys going after that trophy. I think it would be really, really cool for golf. So I hope they make it.
I agree.
Final question for you. 2 or 3 best golf courses architecturally in the world. And, they don't have to be tour courses, but courses you've played where, they're just fantastic. And if you could play golf at these 2 or 3 places the rest of life, you would be happy. And what makes those courses so special in your opinion?
Well, I'm very lucky because I've played a lot of them. And let's break this down a bit. In the UK, my favourite links course is Royal Birkdale. And because I think Royal Birkdale was probably the first natural stadium course because of the way the dunes are and people follow the golf on the side of the dunes, and there was no need for bleachers and stands everywhere. There were the access points were the sand dunes. So and it's a great way out. And it's near to my home, so I grew up playing it from about the age of 14. And then inland courses in the UK, because they're very different, obviously, links and inland. Sunningdale Old, because it's the nicest walk in golf. I mean, just amazing walk. And the Champions Tour, the senior senior British Opens there, and that will be a nice week to watch to see a lot of golfers you've heard of play a golf course that is just sensational to walk around. Over here, I'm lucky enough to play Augusta. I'm lucky enough to have played Pebble Beach. I'm very lucky. I'm a member of Liberty National. And I've played Pine Valley quite often before it came a bit too tough for me. And I think, sort of Pine Valley is almost a golf pervert's golf course. It's got so much history and so many nuances, and such a nice place to go and play golf that would be a special one. Obviously, Pebble's special, like St Andrews Golf Course. I always feel that they're a bit similar. And then the one that probably I enjoyed playing the most and the nicest experience was Shadow Creek. I was lucky enough to go to Vegas for a couple of the big fights and played at Shadow Creek, and I thought that was a fantastic experience to play there. But the golf product in America is so good. Whatever I mention, you're gonna miss a few out. And like I say, I think there's probably 50 iconic courses in America that I haven't played. So,
would you take Pebble or Cypress?
I've never played Cypress, so I take Pebble.
You've never really never played Cypress? I assumed you'd played out there.
No. I've got friends in high places, but not every high place.
Well, you should put that one on your list. It's
I'm sure
I've been fortunate enough to play it once.
Well, I can still play.
Yeah, boy, if you told me Pebble or Cypress, man, is that like an impossible choice? Like both, please, right there. I mean, I love Pebble Beach too, and the Cypress experience is just incredible. It's
I've heard.
It's such good golf out there. Well, I can't thank you enough for your time. I knew I would enjoy this conversation. Really, really, I know you're busy, so thanks for taking the 45 minutes. And
pleasure.
Let's keep watching Darren play some good golf out in the Champions Tour, and we'll be in contact. So thanks so much, Chubby. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks very much for having me.